Millions of people believed the moon was inhabited before a single scientist had the chance to stop it. In the summer of 1835, newspaper readers across the United States opened the latest edition of the New York Sun and found something extraordinary staring back at them. Detailed illustrations showed enormous crystal structures rising from the lunar surface, vast forests spread beneath towering cliffs. Strange temples stood untouched in alien valleys, and living among them were creatures no human being had ever imagined seeing beyond Earth. Bat-like humanoids. Winged creatures walking upright, living inside what readers were told was a thriving lunar civilization. The source appeared unshakable. These discoveries supposedly came from Sir John Herschel, one of the most respected astronomers alive, operating a revolutionary telescope in South Africa, powerful enough to reveal life on the moon itself. And almost nobody questioned it, because the real danger had already begun. At first glance, the story looked exactly like legitimate science reporting. The articles were packed with technical language, optical measurements, telescope specifications, precise descriptions of magnifying lenses so advanced they supposedly transformed astronomy overnight. Readers were not being asked to trust fantasy. They were being asked to trust technology. And in 1835, almost nobody understood enough to challenge it. The newspaper engravings became the proof. Images of giant lunar temples carved into cliffs, strange bison roaming valleys beneath glowing skies, entire ecosystems thriving where every educated person had previously assumed only lifeless rock existed. The same image appeared everywhere. And each time people looked at it, belief grew stronger. Because the telescope itself had become invisible authority. At the time, astronomy was advancing faster than public understanding. Telescopes had recently improved enough to reveal new planets, previously unseen moons, and increasingly detailed planetary observations. Ordinary readers had already watched science repeatedly expand humanity's understanding of the universe. So when newspapers announced that a larger telescope had suddenly uncovered lunar civilization, the claim felt perfectly normal. Nothing looked suspicious. In fact, skepticism felt unreasonable. And that was exactly what made the situation dangerous. The articles continued for 6 straight days. Each report pushed further. The moon was no longer just inhabited. It contained giant sapphire oceans stretching across hundreds of miles. Pyramid-shaped structures stood beside polished amethyst caverns. Rivers wound through forests unlike anything on Earth. And then, the winged humanoids returned. Detailed descriptions explained how these intelligent creatures moved in organized groups, communicating beside temples built with obvious purpose. The illustrations spread rapidly through cities, copied and reprinted by newspapers around the world. The same lunar drawings now meant something larger. This was no longer entertainment. This had become accepted scientific reality. And that is where the real problem started. Because no one could independently verify any of it. There were no competing observatories capable of checking Herschel's supposed telescope. No public access to technical journals fast enough to challenge the claim. International communication moved slowly. Verification depended entirely on trust. The newspaper understood that delay and weaponized it. For days, millions of people operated inside a reality built entirely from technological ignorance. The giant telescope described in the reports never existed. The observations had never happened. But the authority attached to the story had already bypassed skepticism completely. And something larger than astronomy was quietly breaking. The public was learning a dangerous habit. Believing systems they could not understand. Every engraving reinforced it. The lunar cities looked scientific. The bat creatures looked carefully observed. The technical language surrounding the discovery created the appearance of impossible expertise. And once people surrendered understanding to authority, doubt disappeared. The moon itself had not changed. Only human interpretation had changed. But now the consequences were spreading far beyond one newspaper. Other publications began repeating the story without verification. Public conversations shifted overnight. Intellectual circles debated lunar civilization seriously. Churches discussed theological consequences of extraterrestrial life. An entire society had reorganized its understanding of reality around fiction. Not because the evidence was strong, because the mechanism of trust had failed. And the newspaper kept selling record numbers. Then everything collapsed. Weeks later, investigators began tracing the source material. There was no South African observatory producing these discoveries, no giant telescope matching the published specifications. Sir John Herschel had never reported any such findings. The entire series had been fabricated. Every image, every observation, every technical detail, invented. The famous engravings suddenly meant something very different now. The winged humanoids were never evidence of discovery. They were evidence of vulnerability. What looked like scientific reporting had exposed a weakness far older than the internet. People trust machines they do not understand. And once authority hides behind technology, disbelief becomes difficult. The Great Moon Hoax did not simply fool readers. It revealed something permanent. Human beings were never protected by access to information. They were protected only by understanding how information gets verified. Those 19th century lunar engravings still survive today. Bat creatures standing beneath impossible temples. At first glance, they look absurd. But they represent one of history's earliest demonstrations of mass misinformation operating at full scale. The internet did not invent false belief. It only accelerated an old weakness. The moon never changed. We did.